The National Desk, America's News Now.
Where were the sirens? Hawaiians pushed back against the explanation for no warnings given to Maui as the fires destroyed Lahaina.
I've heard the line that, people would have panicked and ran up to the mountains because it's a tsunami siren. The reaction of the community to that is utter disbelief.
Inflation is easing and wages are rising, but another economic concern is keeping Americans down. And an NFL running back learns his fate as he has been in the courtroom and not on the gridiron. This is the National Desk, America's News Now. I'm Dee Dee Gatton, and the Maui death toll from those devastating wildfires has now reached 111, with estimations of over 1,000 people missing as the search for survivors continues. This as authorities take a cautious approach, releasing details of who and how those victims died.
And with all due respect, we haven't made notifications, and I am not going to say how we found people when I haven't even told their families.
Authorities warning the death toll from the nation's deadliest wildfire in more than a century is expected to climb further. Meantime, authorities in Maui are still facing questions after Hawaii's extensive siren system remained silent as the fire spread, destroying Lahaina and other areas on the island. Last night, the Maui Emergency Management Agency administrator said that the sirens are meant for tsunami warnings and would have encouraged residents to run towards the fires that were inland. Hawaiian State Senator Angus McKelvey, who is asking for a full independent investigation and possibly criminal prosecutions, does not agree with that assessment.
It's insulting to think that people would be that clueless, that they wouldn't know that sirens blasting was because of the fire. And these are not tsunami sirens, they're disaster sirens. They're supposed to sound in any kind of different disasters.
Meantime, evacuation alerts are still in effect in the Northwest Territories of Canada as more than 230 fires approach Yellowknife, the capital of the province. You can see these images here. Residents there told to leave as soon as possible, while those in other areas in the region were told to evacuate by noon tomorrow. The smoke from those fires once again creeping south, impacting air quality in the U.S. Only 3 presidents in U.S. history have ever been impeached. Now conservatives want President Biden to become the 4th. They are demanding the U.S. House of Representatives move forward with the process soon. Sinclair's chief political correspondent Scott Thuman takes a look at what's behind the movement and why some warn it could backfire.
For Donald Trump, it's been a difficult year to say the least. This week, suffering his 4th indictment, the threats to his 2024 hopes and his physical freedom piling up.
We love you, Donald!
Trump's super PAC going on the attack, trying to shift suspicion to the current president.
Your brother, grandkids, even nieces and nephews got paid from foreign deals. Your family and their cronies raked in over $17 million from these schemes.
The anti-Biden barrage pushed by organizations like the Conservative Action Project in this new letter, now calling on House Republicans to open an impeachment inquiry against Biden as soon as they come back from summer recess. The conservative campaigns having an impact. 65% of voters in a recent poll said they believe the Justice Department steered the investigation of Hunter Biden to protect him and the president, including 51% of Democrats.
Where's the truth? You've got to get to the bottom of the truth. And the only way Congress can do that is go to impeachment inquiry that gives Republicans and Democrats the ability to get all the information.
Calls for impeachment are becoming common in Washington and perhaps retaliatory for Trump's 2 impeachments, with Republicans threatening to do the same to the head of the FBI, Homeland Security, and Attorney General, and of course, President Biden, who for years has proclaimed his innocence.
I've never discussed my business or their business, my sons or daughters, and I've never discussed them.
If there is proof the president broke the law, the House Republican committee investigating has yet to find it. And not all Republicans support impeachment. Minority Leader Mitch McConnell, among others, hesitant. Impeachment ought to be rare, he warned. This is not good for the country. Worried it could distract from their larger agendas and strategies to try and win in 2024. And to be clear, there's no indication at this point that it will move forward. Speaker McCarthy would have to greenlight it, and to date, he has only indicated that he is open to that idea. Dee Dee.
And Scott, Congress out of session for August. Does that mean, do you think this will calm down a bit in the meantime?
Yeah, not necessarily. Just today, reports out that James Comer, the head of the House Oversight Committee, the Republican, has decided that he is requesting from the National Archives correspondence from then Vice President Joe Biden, so during his previous term in the White House, about overseas deals that may be related to his son Hunter. So, yes, it's supposed to be quiet here in August on Capitol Hill, but no, the action has not stopped.
Never a dull moment in Washington, D.C. Scott Thuman reporting live. Thank you. President Biden made a short trip to the Scranton area to pay respects to former Pennsylvania First Lady Ellen Casey and mother to Senator Bob Casey. She died Friday at age 91. The two were longtime friends. He said he came today to not be a burden on the family at the funeral.
I am not going to the funeral tomorrow. Everyone would have to be wanted to go in. I'd mess everything up if I went. But in addition to that, I have to meet at Camp David with two world leaders tomorrow morning.
And President Biden is now at Camp David, where tomorrow morning he will meet with the Prime Minister of Japan and the President of South Korea. Both are U.S. allies, but the relationship they have with each other is not amicable. President Biden is hoping to strengthen diplomatic ties to the summit in Maryland, and it's expected the countries will agree to a three-way hotline to speak directly with each other in a crisis as China's military aggression towards Taiwan only grows and North Korea expands their nuclear threats. Speaking of which, North Korea is preparing for another round of weapons displays, according to South Korea's intelligence service. Kim Jong-un is reportedly going to resume weapons testing in response to U.S.-South Korean military exercises starting next week. And the U.S.-South Korea-Japan summit at Camp David tomorrow. North Korea also may try to launch a spy satellite later this month or next month. A mosquito alert continues in South Florida after 4 more cases of dengue fever were reported. The cases were reported in the last week. None of these people reportedly have traveled internationally recently, despite almost all cases of dengue in the U.S. being contracted out of the country. South Florida has seen 10 cases of dengue since the beginning of the year. New York and Connecticut officials are telling residents to be careful after 3 people died from a rare flesh-eating bacterial infection. Vibriosis can be found in seawater and raw or undercooked seafood. It can destroy skin and cause ulcers and other symptoms. The New York governor's office is investigating the death there. A Mississippi judge has declared a mistrial in the trial of Brandon Case and his father. The 2 white men were charged with attempted murder after they allegedly fired shots into a FedEx truck driven by a black man, DeMontario Gibson, back in January 2022. The judge tossed the case today after suspending the trial yesterday when a detective said under oath he did not properly give attorneys on each side a recorded statement from the victim. Prosecutors could move to retry the case next year. Right now, more than 52 million Americans, they are still under heat alerts as the heat wave continues in many areas. Multnomah County, Oregon, looking into a second suspected heat-related death after triple-digit temperatures in that area. The National Desk's Emily Gersh reports from Portland.
Temperatures go up, 911 volume goes through the roof, we have more police calls, we have more fire calls, so it is strain across the entire system.
Portland Public Safety Commissioner Renee Gonzalez describing how a 4-day heat wave with scorching temperatures put stress on the entire city, but particularly on emergency resources, compounded by the city's homelessness and drug addiction crisis.
The addiction crisis and heavy drug use has a lot of overlap with the homeless issue. It has its own unique problems. It's taxing our entire 911 system right now, and I wish there was a quick fix there in relief for the 911 system. I'm just not seeing it right now.
During the summer of 2021, which included the June heat dome, 257 people in Multnomah County went to the ER for heat illness. The county says in a typical year, they see less than 100. A total of 72 people died. So far this week, the county has reported 2 deaths that may be heat-related. In an effort to protect people against the dangerous heat, the city of Portland and Multnomah County opened 3 daytime cooling centers from 1 p.m. to 8 p.m. Sunday through Wednesday. They were not open overnight.
Due to the cooling that we were seeing and the amount of hours that cooling was taking place, the county and city decided collaboratively not to open overnight.
Coming up next here on the National Desk, high inflation has been easing, but some Americans are still not feeling the relief. We'll break down new economic data. Then, Defense Department officials are calling for action with an alarming surge in sexual assault in military academies. What they say needs to change. Then, drug shortages are causing serious problems for cancer patients. What will it take to ensure a lasting fix? We're back in 90 seconds. U.S. jobless claims fell again last week to 239,000, down from 250,000 the week before. It's seen as a proxy for the number of layoffs. The new number suggests the labor market is still strong in spite of high interest rates as well as inflation. U.S. mortgage rates jumped over 7% today to their highest level since April of 2002. This is from data out of housing market lender Freddie Mac, and it says mortgage rates have jumped nearly 2 points since August of last year. The report also shows that home sales have dropped about 20% lower than they were a year ago. High inflation has been easing, but even though wages are growing faster than consumer prices, some workers are still not feeling the relief. The National Desk, Angela Brown, breaks it all down.
When you look at the numbers, inflation is going down 3.2% right now. Last July in 2022, 8.5%. But that doesn't mean that wages are going farther.
At home, you may be wondering, wage growth? What wage growth? Any pay bump? Gobbled up by inflation. Food up 4.9%. Electricity up 3%. Shelter costs up 7.7%. Gerald Storch, former CEO, Toys R Us.
Consumers are stressed. They're reluctant to buy goods. They're spending money on services still, some of that pandemic revenge. But when you adjust for inflation, sales of physical products are actually down for 11 straight months.
But wages are rising roughly 4.4% in the last 12 months. Ted Rossman from Bankrate says we are starting to see meaningful progress.
Wage growth is outpacing inflation all of a sudden. So 4.4% was the latest reading for the average hourly earnings growth. 3.2% is the latest headline CPI number.
But the same measure the Fed is using to bring down inflation, including raising interest rates, is costing taxpayers. Days ago, the New York Fed announcing credit card debt exceeding $1 trillion. Credit card delinquencies also rising, topping 5%. Financial services experts say middle-income families are still struggling.
While it's true that inflation is slowing, we're still seeing, prices are up. They've not gone down. They're just going up more slowly. And when you have a multi-year compounding effect of that, maybe 3% this year on top of 7 or 8% last year, you've got middle-income families dealing with double-digit growth in prices.
In Washington, D.C., I'm Angela Brown.
More than 1.5 million dehumidifiers are being recalled after several reported fires. This recall covers 42 models under 5 brand names. Look right here, the list on your screen. Kenmore, GE, Soleus, Air, Norpol, and Seabreeze. They were sold from January 2011 to February 2014 at places like Walmart and Home Depot. If you have one, you're urged to unplug it, stop using it, and contact Gree Electric Appliances for a refund. Hurricane Hilary has formed in the eastern Pacific, and it's on course for Southern California. The National Hurricane Center projects significant impacts to the Baja California Peninsula and SoCal this weekend into early next week, even after it becomes post-tropical. Tropical storm force winds are expected to remain when it reaches California. Heavy rainfall could trigger flash flooding and landslides. Rideshare apps Uber and Lyft are considering cutting off services in Minneapolis if a new law passes. City council members just approved a bill today that would increase driver pay. Not clear, though, if the mayor will sign it. Other places have passed similar laws without losing service. A Pentagon study calls for action from U.S. military academies to reduce an alarming increase in sexual assaults as well as misconduct. The latest data shows 1 in 5 female students reported unwanted sexual contact. The report says the Army, Navy, and Air Force academies should improve their leadership and training and address what it says is the toxic command climate. Cincinnati Bengals running back Joe Mixon did not take the stand in his own defense as he faced charges of aggravated menacing in a road rage incident, as his attorneys believe the prosecution did not make their case. It came as no surprise to them. It took the judge just 20 minutes this morning to arrive at this verdict.
After a careful review of all of the evidence presented at trial, including the stipulations and the testimony presented today, I cannot say that the city sustained its burden. Not guilty.
After the verdict, the Bengals said they are glad the situation is resolved and looked forward to Mixon being an important part of their team this season. We have reporters all across the country in your neighborhoods covering issues that matter to you. We're taking the pulse of America.
Food pantries in Las Cruces say that they are giving out food to more people than usual. They say one of the many factors playing into this is people not receiving SNAP benefits due to a backlog in paperwork.
Just an influx of new clients. I mean, yesterday we probably picked up 15 clients at one site. New clients.
The Salvation Army Food Pantry tells me they've seen a 20% increase in the amount of people going to their food pantry every week. They add that food is not the only thing people are in need of right now.
They desperately need help with either paying their utilities or paying their rent because they don't have the money to pay for it because they had to pay for groceries. Because their SNAP benefits aren't coming in and they're needing to use that money to feed their family.
Black facts, not fiction. Black facts, not fiction.
Educators, parents, and activists held signs while chanting outside the Palm Beach County School Board headquarters Wednesday to protest Florida's new standards for teaching Black history, which has since sparked controversy for what it says about slavery.
We will not stand for it. We want our children and other people's children to know the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
A packed room at the first school board meeting since the new school year started, with many sharing different historical accounts of how African Americans contributed to this country.
There is a way to continue to teach history, and we expect the school district to support that and to give some support to teachers to have the resources and tools to do that as well.
No woman, no mother should ever go through this.
Former employees of O'Reilly Auto Parts stood with State Attorney General Bob Ferguson as he announced a newly filed lawsuit against the major retailer.
Pregnant employees have a right to reasonable accommodations in the workplace.
The lawsuit alleges discrimination and retaliation against pregnant workers that reportedly led them to suffer mentally, physically, and financially. It states that for some pregnant employees to keep their jobs, they were forced to continue handling hazardous materials and exceeded their weightlifting restrictions.
I was still required to perform tasks that were against my doctor's orders.
Aria Crate held her now 9-month-old baby as she said she would not be returning to O'Reilly after her maternity leave.
Coming up next, drug shortages are causing serious problems for cancer patients. What it will take to fix the problem for good. We'll be right back. Welcome back. 1 out of every 5 cancer patients in the U.S. are being told the critical drugs that may be needed to treat their cancer are in short supply. What will it take to ensure a lasting fix is put into place? Spotlight on America national investigative correspondent Lisa Fletcher sat down with a key member of Congress to ask.
Think about it. You've been diagnosed with cancer, and you know that there are drugs and regimens out there that will significantly prolong your life. And now we're telling you that we're not sure if we're going to be able to give those to you.
It's a gut punch, hitting as many as 500,000 cancer patients in the U.S. Their treatment course can't move forward as planned because the necessary drugs aren't available.
Today's shortages are the worst that I've seen in my 30-year career.
Dr. Julie Graylow is the chief medical officer for the American Society of Clinical Oncology.
We've had drug shortages in oncology since 2011, and nothing has really been done.
Why do you think we haven't learned our lesson?
Everyone's agreeing that this should not happen. I think where we're not having uniform agreement is in how do we fix it.
Many of the drugs in short supply aren't profitable, so U.S. companies don't make them. Instead, most production happens overseas, in China and India. Late last year, the Indian factory that supplies some of the most needed chemo drugs shut down for violations, leaving hundreds of thousands of patients without life-saving medication.
People that are battling cancer, trying to courageously battle it, and are not even given the tools in the greatest country in the world, the tools to fight that.
Republican Congressman Brian Fitzpatrick lost his brother Mike, a former U.S. congressman, to cancer in 2020. He is now co-chair of the Congressional Cancer Caucus, a bipartisan group of 64 members dedicated to giving cancer patients the best chance of survival.
How problematic is it for you that Americans are having to rely on Chinese and Indian manufacturing of drugs that are proving questionable?
Yeah, it's a huge problem. We need to onshore as many of these productions as we can, but what we should never do is offshore, particularly to hostile nations like China.
This year, President Biden asked for $2.8 billion to continue the Cancer Moonshot program. But a task force formed specifically to address drug shortages has yet to come up with any solutions.
This administration has not been able to manage getting critical care drugs to 500,000 Americans. How are people supposed to take that when they're being asked to spend $2.8 billion in tax money, but something this critical and this immediate can't be handled?
I commend the president for wanting that cash infusion. The advice I've given to the president will continue to give him. Yes, we need the resources. We need the moonshot, the boost, the significant boost in funding. But we also need to look at the regulatory scheme.
There are definitely partisan issues at play,
Yep.
but there is a cost to inaction. How important is it right now for Congress to just do something?
There's no reason why we can't figure this out. The only thing that's stopping it, Lisa, is politics. Yeah, that's the bottom line.
What are you planning to do when you come back into session this fall to help fast-track these drugs and figure out a way to get a safe and stable supply to Americans?
We're not waiting until September. We've been working on this, is putting together a working group on the Problem Solvers Caucus to focus solely on this issue, put a two-party solution together, work with the administration, work with this, our bipartisan colleagues in the Senate to get at least a product together. We will be able to then hold it up and say, if you want to solve the issue of drug shortages, here's a solution. Now, who are the members that have courage to do the right thing and who doesn't?
For Spotlight on America, I'm Lisa Fletcher.
And coming up next here, there's a major shakeup in the women's national soccer team. The latest developments when we come back in 90 seconds. The U.S. women's national soccer team's head coach Vlatko Andonovski resigned today. The national team scored just 4 goals in the FIFA World Cup, and they were eliminated in the round of 16. They were the pre-tournament favorites and had won the last 2 cups. Twylee Kilgore will take over as the interim head coach for their next exhibition matches in September. The man known as the praying coach is back on the sidelines for the start of a new football season. The Bremerton School District in Washington State reinstated assistant coach Joe Kennedy 8 years after putting him on administrative leave for taking a knee to pray quietly after each football game. Kennedy won a religious discrimination suit in the Supreme Court last year.
The coaching staff's been so gracious. School district they're working through it, and hopefully we can move beyond this and hopefully have a great season.
Coach Kennedy says he will continue to quietly pray after each game. And that's going to do it for us for now. Join us again tonight for the evening edition of the National Desk. Check your local listings. I'm Dee Dee Gatton. Thanks for watching.